My name's Bill Aulet, and I'm an entrepreneur and an accidental academic. All of you teach at the Business Academy, right? No, not everyone, because there's someone here from IBM. Who's from IBM?
I'm here.
Ah, and there's someone from some other, beyond, there's someone from DTU? No, where are you from?
DTI.
DTI, that's a private company. All right, so I'm going to talk, they reeled me, I worked at IBM for 11 years, and then after I graduated from university, and then I did startups for a long time. And after my third one, I kind of figured it out, and then MIT had asked me to teach entrepreneurship. And so that's what I do now. And I found it to be a lot more challenging and a lot more rewarding than I had ever imagined. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Why would I teach entrepreneurship? Why do we teach it at MIT? And then what success and what challenges have we had? So how would you define entrepreneurship? See, I've become a professor. I can ask questions of the class. How would you define entrepreneurship? Let's go to this table right here. Not you, not you. I don't want you to answer.
Okay, it's me then. Okay, great. Entrepreneurship is about taking risk. You have a great idea, and then you form a team, take the risk, and build a product and go to the market. And hopefully you will be successful doing so. And then you can be a serial entrepreneur doing the same steps once again.
Do you agree with that? Is there anything else you want to add? It seems to me that this is a lot of stuff that you would do in marketing, right? There's a lot of people here from marketing, right? Yeah, what's different?
No, I don't see it as robust as that. I see it more like some kind of a spirit where you seek opportunities in general.
Spirit, seek opportunities. You don't see it as robust.
No, actually I don't, but that's because, you know, I think there's been quite a few cases that's shown that it's, you know, you jump from one idea to another idea, and that is, you know, the entrepreneurship isn't in it, is that you jump from idea to idea.
Yeah. So what do you teach?
Actually, I teach a whole lot in management, economics, also how to start your own business.
Okay. So there's a difference. It says not as robust as this. It's more kind of about this, which is more spirit-oriented. Yes?
I'd probably say it's like about validating the sort of the ideas and validating them with the market, I would say as well.
Validating ideas. And that's special to entrepreneurship.
I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah. Who else? How about from the left-hand side of the room over here? What do you think, sir? You're smiling.
Well, I'm smiling because I think our colleagues are right, but I would include things like stamina as well.
Stamina.
Because you really need to exercise a high level of stamina to succeed, in my opinion.
Which you don't need in a big company. These people at IBM, they just... By the way, I don't mean to insult you. I'm just from New York. This is what we do. Are people comfortable with this? This is entrepreneurship? Yes?
Maybe being a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And naive.
Crazy and naive.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to say that creating something that's never been done before by taking financial risk.
Yeah, yeah. Creating something, a technical term, not done before. What do you teach?
I teach nothing. I'm going to do presentation.
You're
I'm
a
being
student.
told. but I take it as a compliment.
So creating something that's not been done before. So I'm going to go through this and just talk a little bit about this. I think one of the first things you do as an engineer, I'm a fake engineer. That's what I was trained in when I was an undergraduate. And I'm a fake engineer because I have my engineering degree from Harvard, which people at MIT think is hysterically funny, that Harvard trains engineers. You don't have to laugh like that. that Harvard trains engineers. But I like things very rational when we go through them. And so what I want to do is first kind of define what an entrepreneur is, and then we'll talk about that. I differentiate between what I call SME entrepreneurs. These are small, medium enterprise entrepreneurs, and what I'm going to call innovation-driven entrepreneurs, or IDE entrepreneurs. And SME is, I want to just go start I want to start a restaurant. And if I start a restaurant, it's just for a local market. It might be for Copenhagen, this is for a local market, and there's a need for a restaurant over here, and we're going to do a restaurant, or I'm going to do an IT service company for here. There's nothing really particularly special about it, but it serves a local market, and we don't have to invest a lot, and we will get we put stuff in, it will kind of grow linearly until it tops out because the market's there. So there's a rapid response time. That means the delta T, the time to respond to the system is quite quick. If we put money in, we'll see results quickly. It will grow pretty much linearly as we go through it, but at some point it's capped. Are these good? These things are great. These are geographically distributed. Every area needs them. They're good for the economy. So what I'm going to talk about, these are that go after more global markets or super regional markets. And in these, there's something called an innovation in there. What we can talk about what that is in a second. And that allows you to actually, you put money in or you put resources and you don't get any response for a while. And then when you do get a response, it tends to take off and grow exponentially. So here the response time is lower because we put it in and we're not seeing any results because we're not seeing any revenue or cash flow. But then at some point it starts taking off. And the good news is that when it takes off, we can sell to very wide markets because we're not constrained by the local market. So there's this negative downturn and then this kind of high growth. The good news is these create thousands of jobs. If you look at the US economy, there were 40 million net new jobs created between 1980 and 2005. Where were they created? They were essentially created by these companies. Not small companies, but new companies that go in and grow exponentially. And this is what everybody wants to do. These transform economies. Bad news is these are exportable jobs. They are not geographically set. They're not as attractive to politicians. Politicians love these because they put money in, they get jobs that happen quickly, they're dispersed around, and everyone's happy about it. These are not as much so. These can be concentrated in geographies, and as things change, they can move someplace else. So that's the first thing I would say. One thing I didn't define here, so what it would be more is you're creating something where it's not been done before. Our Learn It, well-dressed student here, you're creating something where there was nothing before. It's not like optimizing a system. A lot of times in management or marketing or management, we're optimizing, we're making systems more predictable and the like. What we're doing in entrepreneurship is creating something that's never existed before. And it could be a small one, or it could be something that we're targeting to be large. And by the way, you can start here and go over here. It's not easy, but you can do that. But this is kind of like a similar sport, but it's not the same sport. Why? Because over here, you have to understand, ownership structures. You have to understand fundraising. You have to understand, as Noam Wasserman says, you can be king or you can be rich. I'm sorry, you can be king or you can be rich, but it's hard to be a rich king. In this one, you can control the enterprise. It can be a family business. You can kind of keep the equity for yourself. Over here, you're going to have more financing needs. You're going to have other things. It's hard to keep that. Steve Jobs owned a very small fraction of Apple when it was successful. And this is a different approach. This is what I focus on. This is what we do at MIT. There are other people who do this, And a lot of these principles will apply over here, but I'm focused on this, and that's the first rule of entrepreneurship. Focus, who's your customer and who is not your customer. Select your market and deselect markets. Everybody likes to select markets. Nobody likes to deselect markets. So when the dean came in and said, I've got a whole bunch of money to do family businesses, aren't you excited, Bill? I said, no, that's not our customer. We don't do that, which didn't make him happy. But that's what entrepreneurs do. So we'll talk about these things, this idea of entrepreneurs like risk. You know, I did this article about, you know, the 7 unhealthy myths about entrepreneurs is they love risk. No, I'm an entrepreneur. I do not like risk, just to be clear. I never go to a casino and bet on 64. I don't know any entrepreneur that does that. That is just stupid. It's stupid. Entrepreneurs are willing to take risk where they have an unfair advantage, knowing that they're going to win over time, but entrepreneurs do not just take risk. That's not the difference. It's willingness to take risk in an intelligent fashion. This is critically important. Having a team, the idea that entrepreneurship is not as an individual sport is not true. It's a team sport. And when you look at the data, and especially the way things are going, it's critically important to build teams. A product or an offering, people here from the service group, you know, a replicatable product or offering is how you get this. And that could be a process as well. And understanding markets is really what this is all about, because as I'll show you in a second. So this and this. So then the question was, what's an innovation? And people often say, well, that is a technology. That equals invention. That means the reason why MIT is great at entrepreneurship is because you have so many inventions. You have so many patents. You have so much technology. That is not true. Innovation does not equal invention. Let me be real clear. This costs money. This is technology, patents, you know, ideas. This costs money here. This makes you money. So there's something missing here. And what's missing is commercialization. Commercialization. If I spell a word wrong, just be open-minded. And this is the aspect of taking a new-to-the-world idea, process, technology, whatever it is, and finding a customer that it will be of value to, because innovation is something that has value. And so what often happens is people overemphasize in their mind, by their investments, that innovation comes from invention. And that is a dangerous thing to overestimate. So what's the most innovative company in the world besides IBM? Yes? 3M. 3M? It was at one point, it was arguably at one point, and then it was not. And we can go into that. Yes? You don't need to raise your hands. I'm American. We just yell stuff out.
Walmart.
What?
Walmart.
Walmart. What's that?
Walmart.
Oh, Walmart. Walmart's interesting.
They have the highest number of patents.
Walmart has the highest number of patents? Okay. I think a lot of people would argue that Apple, Google, you know, are two of the most innovative companies, because Walmart can't, but these things, they took off, right? Or Amazon. We could go to Amazon. Yeah. Amazon. Yeah. SpaceX remains to be seen. They haven't really, I mean, if you want to solve the American debt crisis, you would look to these companies for sure, and maybe this company. SpaceX you would not look to. So creating value is not all about making money, but it's a relevant proxy. So if you think of Apple, and this I'll make the point, then I'll make it not just to bash Apple. I'm not here to bash anyone.
Excuse me. How do you define being best at innovation?
Continually coming out with new products that create value for customers, right? If you look at Apple, they came out with the Macintosh, then it was the iPod, then it was the iPhone, then it's, you know, it just goes on and on, right?
Yeah, but it's not a matter, but Apple has launched very few products.
They've launched very few products. The Macintosh.
I'm not saying that they're not innovative, but
yeah.
in terms of they have launched very few but very successful products.
Yeah, well, that's innovation is about how much value you create,
It's
right?
it's about shareholder value.
Yeah, it's about how much value you create. Is about will people use your product and do that? Like, so you know, 3M produces a ton of products. That's someone who set up here 3M. But have any of them been to the level of the Macintosh? Have any of them been to the level of the iPod, or even the iPhone, or even the iPod? And the answer is no. And you look at Apple, and they've done iTunes, iPod, iPhone, you know, the Macintosh, kind of. Now we can talk about whether that continues or not. But when you look at this, here's the point. Let's just say Apple is an innovative company. I think everyone can agree that Apple's an innovative company. Was it because of the invention? Was it because of the things that they came up with in their labs? What's the big breakthrough in the Macintosh? It's called a Windows icon mouse pointer. You know, where you have a mouse and you point at things on the screen, right? And who was that? Who was responsible for that patent? Was it Jobs or Wozniak?
I think it was, wasn't it someone else that developed the mouse?
Wow, wow. You mean it was Xerox PARC? Yeah.
But I mean,
You won't find Wozniak or Jobs' name on the patents, even as much as Jobs wants to put it on there. It's not there. It came from Xerox PARC. It is a classic. They went in and they saw it, and they took that idea, and then they figured out how to commercialize it, right? And if you look at the iPod, was that their brand new idea? Absolutely not. Do you know who it was? Fraunhofer came up with the MP3 technology, and they were unable to monetize it, and nor was Creative Labs, which came out of it. It was Apple who was very good at commercialization. They don't come up with the idea themselves. As Steve Jobs said, good artists create, great artists steal. And by the way, he stole that from Picasso, if you look at history, which fits in exactly with his whole motif, right? But it's not this, and this is what people re-emphasize too much, is that it's the tech. And I'm from MIT, and the T stands for technology, and technology is overrated. I can say that, right? And often governments overinvest here, and you see it over and over again. They put a whole bunch of PhDs on something, and they wonder why they don't get entrepreneurship, because they're not getting the commercialization. So, but MIT is a prolific. There are 1,000 companies a year that are started by MIT alumni. And those companies are very successful. It'd be the 10th biggest economy if you put them all together in the world. So that has to come from this. So that refutes your point, Bill. No, actually it doesn't. Because I can tell you exactly how many companies are started out of the MIT labs, because there's a thing called the Technology Licensing Office at MIT. And to get something from the lab to the marketplace, you have to go through the Technology Licensing Office, and they have very good records of how many companies do that. And they do a fantastic job, the Technology Licensing Office. And I can tell you, in a good year, they have 30. In a down year, they'll have 20 companies. That's fantastic. They help produce about 20 to 30 companies a year. Isn't that impressive? That is impressive. But is it impressive when it's compared to the 1,000 companies a year? No, that's less than 3% of the companies that are started by MIT alumni. So this idea that MIT companies are started because of technology comes out of the lab is not true. You don't have a transfer of technology. You have a transfer of knowledge about how to commercialize new to the world ideas, new to the world technology, new to the world processes. And it's actually this that's the magic. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They figure out how to commercialize new to the world ideas and technologies and processes and the like. So let me just show you, do we have a clicker that I could use? I'll just go through this quickly here. This was what I just went through. This is what I do on the first day of my class at MIT, and I just did really quickly with the students there. And I say, I'm going to tell you two stories. The first one is about a student named Nathan Ashcraft, and he was a PhD at MIT, and he had this revolutionary membrane technology. I have to turn it on. It's a difficult user interface. And so I'm going to tell you about Dipole first. And Nathan came back after a summer, and he was so excited by the entrepreneurship class that he said, I want to start a company called Dipole, Bill, and can you help me raise money for this company? And I said, well, tell me about the company, Nathan, tell me more. And he said, he gave me this plan and basically said all these things. This was his thesis. It's called DMFC. Basically, you have water going in and CO2 coming out and oxygen coming in, and it produces, through this membrane, it produces 53% more power than previous systems. So basically, it's a fuel cell that actually will probably work. And also, by the way, it produces 2 orders of magnitude, 100x decrease in methanol. Methanol being something that's very bad for the environment. And so this looks really great. His thesis is not just some abstract thing. It actually has benefits. And not only does it have benefits if it works, he knows how to he figured out how to manufacture it. And here's the patent protection, intellectual property. So can you help me raise money for this business, Bill? He says. And I say, Nathan, that's really interesting. And I don't know what you think about this business. I could ask you all if we had time, if we were in a class, I'd say, what do you think? And students say, I love it. Yeah, this is great. Da, 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 da. I'd say, well, let me tell you what I told Nathan. I told Nathan that he needs to meet with a friend of mine, and actually not my friend, but my friend's son. And he needs to speak to my friend's son. He goes, what does he do? I said, he's in the lemon business. He goes, no, Bill, this is not synthetic biology. This is a membrane technology. I said, no, he's not into synthetic biology. His name is Alex, and he has a lemonade stand. And he does something very interesting. He takes a lemon and he squeezes it in, and then he puts water and he puts sugar in it. And then he does this thing where he takes this lemonade and he gives it to someone, and then they give him money for it. This is called a paying customer right here. These are called paying customers. This is called Alex's helicopter mom right here. But do you have helicopter moms in Denmark? Yeah. Overseeing everything. But he said, so what's your point, Bill? I said, do you remember the first day of class that a business was not that complicated, Nathan? I said, the single necessary and sufficient condition for a business is what? And there's only one. There's one and only one condition. And if you have this, you have a business. And if you don't have a business. He said, a business plan. I said, no, that's not a business. He said, oh, a product. I said, no, it's not a product. Nathan, what was it? And he goes, oh, was it all that kind of like vision and mission stuff that the MBAs were talking about? It's like, no, that's not a business. He said, fundraising. No, Nathan. It's a paying customer. You need to have a paying customer. Doesn't mean you have a great business, but that is the definition of having a business. You have a paying customer. And there's no analysis of a paying customer in here. This is a science fair project. And we don't do science fair projects here. You are great at science fair projects, but we're trying to teach you how to take that science fair project and commercialize it and make an innovation that's valuable to people, and you have no analysis of the customer here. So they go, he says, all right, great. By the way, Nathan's doing great now. He wasn't doing great at the end of the meeting, but that's as educators, that's what we have to do, right? So, so then the next one I do is an example of this Lamborghini dealership, where this person starts a Lamborghini dealership, and or Dean or whoever, and I say he made a lot of money doing disciplined entrepreneurship, and then he went out to the West Coast and he joined up with some other people, and he made a lot of money in a company. And then he decided he wanted to come back to Boston and do something and run it himself and do something he was more passionate about than advertising technology. So he took his money, he came back, and he started a Lamborghini dealership in Boston. And he figured out the right place. He figured out 2,500 customers. He would start in Boston. He would sell to northern New England. Then he would move down to New York City. Then he would move down to the Mid-Atlantic to Philadelphia and then Washington, D.C., and he would have this big Lamborghini franchise where he would give them a unique experience. And wouldn't that be fantastic? And so what he did is he took $2 million of his own money. He knew the customers. He built a total experience. He got someone, a technician 1 and technician 2 to do it. He had beautiful pictures. you know, he got a $75,000 espresso machine here, and he got a Lamborghini. And he set this up in Back Bay, and it was fantastic, you know. And he's going to have this great experience for when his customer comes in here, that they're going to want to buy a Lamborghini and maybe more. And then he's going to service it, and he's going to give them a great experience. And they're going to tell their friends about Lamborghini dealership, the dealership, because no one's doing this. And so he starts it. He does his grand opening. And then for 2.5 weeks, nobody comes into his store. And the people, he's starting to lose confidence in these people. He has to pay them. And he's invested all this. And then after 2.5 weeks, Laura comes up in her 2.5-year-old Volvo. And she comes up, and she knew Erdine from college. And they have this conversation, and it's good to see you again. And she, yeah, I got my 2 kids, and my husband's teaching at BC Law School. And she goes, great, let's get together. This would be wonderful. Before she leaves, she says, hey, Erdine, I want to ask you a favor, and I think it's good for you, too. Can you fix can you just do some maintenance on my Volvo here? Because I don't like going to other places. And I trust you. We went to college together. I trust you. Will you service my Volvo here? And those people in the back, they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there playing Angry Birds right now. And so I'll give you 80% profit on it. I'll give you just service my Volvo and $1,500, and I will, you know, up to $1,500, and I'll give you 80% profit. And then, you know, and then I go, all right, you're Erdine. What's your team going to do? And everybody breaks up, and then we come back, and then I say, all right, what did you decide to do? Did you take it to her business or not? And what do you think they say? What would you say? Yeah, why? Why? What's the single necessary and sufficient condition for a business? A paying customer. You have someone who's willing to pay you here, right? And so why do we even have to think about this for a second? She's sitting here. They're not getting paid. Let's do it. And that's the first thing. And by the way, maybe she knows other people. She'll tell other people to come in for the Lamborghini, and her husband might buy one, and she might buy one. And it's just, why would you not? You got to get people into the store, right? Everybody liking this? Yeah. Yes.
Well, did he do it?
Did he do it? Well, that's the question. Should he do it?
Well, I'm not sure, actually, because he's deviating quite hard from his initial path.
Yeah.
I'd say. Even though all the good arguments, because these are not his customers.
Well, do you do it or not? You're running a business. You got to make a decision. She's coming back. She's offering you money. Do you take it? Yes or no?
If I was an entrepreneur, this is a freebie. If I was an entrepreneur, I don't think I would do it because these are not my customers.
So let me tell you, this is a situation. I'm an entrepreneur. I sell this all the time. You're selling product A, and someone comes in and wants to buy product A prime. And you can justify it, but is it right thing to do? And how would you decide? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. How do you decide? And so they do this, and we go through this whole thing, and the answer isn't really clear. Until we lay upon them some wisdom, right? As we do as teachers. And what we do is we talk about, well, who is your target customer? Who are these 22,500 people? Well, they're males who are 50 years old, and they make a lot of money, over $2 million per year, even maybe $6 million, depending how many times they were married. If they were married 3 times, it'd have to be 6. If they're married twice, it could be 4. You know, and they're divorced. They're single at this point. What do they like to do? They like to go on private jet planes to Monaco. They like to go to Las Vegas. They like to go to nightclubs. They like to have a supermodel with them at all. He just threw you in front of the bus on that. And then we get into the demographics, psychographics. What is this person buying? Are they buying the most cost-efficient, ergonomically designed, lowest carbon footprint, mechanically sound way to get from point A to point B? Not exactly. Yeah, that's fair. Not exactly. What are they buying? They're buying image. This is all about image. This is all about image. Be very clear. And this is the marketer, your marketers. Is this what marketeers do? Yeah. Does this mean that this is not, if a woman came in to buy one, they wouldn't? No, they wouldn't. So, but what we know that over 95% of the people who buy Lamborghinis are male. And they're not all fitting this, but if you looked at the bell curve of people who do it, the most likely candidate is there. That's exactly how we develop products, right? You know that. This isn't entrepreneurship. This is just basic marketing. Now let's look at Laura. And so if you get one of these people, these cars cost at least $350,000, if not more, and then they're going to do their service through you, and they're going to do all this stuff. So from a lifetime value, this customer is going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to you. So if I can get some subsegment of this market at hundreds of thousands of dollars per customer, is it an interesting market from a financial standpoint? The answer is yes, yes, absolutely. And then all of a sudden, this ridiculously expensive coffee machine that we went to, espresso machine that you went to Italy to get, hey, if that's what it takes to get this customer, this demographic, so be it. Because if he has a great experience, he will tell other people at the nightclub or at the private jet or whatever the watering holes that these people go to that they should come in and do this. Totally understood. This is not something that we made up. This is Procter & Gamble CPG Marketing 101. Now, if we look at Laura, on the other hand, Laura is a female, average is 40-ish, right? She is, they make about maybe $250,000 per year. You know, where does she go? She sure doesn't go to nightclubs. And she goes, where is she going? What's she doing? Totally different lifestyle, right? And by the way, what's her LTV? Well, her LTV is going to be $10,000, maybe $20,000. Because if she gets $350,000, what's she going to do with it? Buy a two-seater car? You pay off her mortgage. Remember, she has 2 kids. We didn't get into this. What's her number 1 priority? What? Yeah, for the kids. It's the kids. It's all about the kids, right? Someone in the previous said family, and I said, wow, it's different in Copenhagen, because in the United States, the wife cares about the kids, the dog, the cat, the car, and then the husband's like down here. That's totally different here. So what's she buying? Is she buying the most cost-efficient way with the lowest carbon footprint to get from A to B with the most mechanically sound? More or less. More or less? Absolutely not. What's she buying? One word.
Safety.
Safety. That is what Volvo is crushing. Safety. And it is, when you look at this, you would like to think people just think rationally, but you have to understand the demographics and psychographics of it. And this is what they're buying. Ironically, is this the most safe car in the world? No. No, it is not. It's not. It's certainly on the high end, but it is not the safest car. So again, you're not making a rational decision that people think. If you look at behavioral economics, her friends drive Volvos, other people, you're sending a signal that this is what you do. It's like a Prius. People, oh, I'm buying a Prius. Oh, why are you buying a Prius? Economics. No, it makes no sense economically. Oh, I just run the numbers. It's simple. Okay, well, it makes sense from carbon footprint. No, it doesn't make sense. If you want to spend an extra $7,500, there are much better ways to reduce your carbon footprint than getting a Prius. What are you doing? You're scratching an emotional need of the person, right? And that's what you're doing here. It makes sense to some degree, but then you have to understand all the dynamics. And so if you take this person in to do this, do you feel good now? No, you shouldn't feel good. This is not pivoting like sometimes they say, we should pivot. No, you should think disciplined. If I bring this person in, I'm taking $1,500, and let's say it's all profit. Is that solving the problem? Not at all. It's like saying, you know, you have cancer, you know. Well, should I have surgery? No, I'm just going to take an aspirin and have a drink tonight and I'll feel better. Yeah, then you'll wake up the next morning and you still have this problem that you've got to deal with called cancer, right? This is not going to solve your problem. This is your target customer. You got to go out and find them. You've invested $2 million in the business because you thought it was a good business. You had this. You got to go out and find these people, meet them at the nightclubs, meet them at the Hanscom Field, meet them at wherever they need to go, their watering holes. That's what you need to do. And this is what disciplined entrepreneurship is about. Who is your customer and who is not your customers? And when you look at great businesses, if you look at Amazon, they start with a very specific market and then they systematically grow. Amazon's everywhere now. But where did they start? Books. Did they do books and CDs at the beginning? No, they did one thing. They did one thing. And then once they dominate that, then they moved into CDs. And now today they do Washington Post, groceries, AWS, everything under the board. But it's a systematic approach to how do you create companies, and that's what we do. And so I want to go back to how do we train this at MIT. The first thing to be an entrepreneur, it's a little different than other things. Someone mentioned this, is you start with the heart. Let me go back. You start with, because if someone doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, you can't turn them into an entrepreneur. If someone isn't enthused about going and working at IBM, they can still be a good employee. No offense, I work there. You can still be a good employee. To be an entrepreneur, there's so much kind of up and down and trials and failure involved with it that you really have to want to do this. You have to want to do this. And once you believe you can do it and you want to do it, then we can give you the knowledge as to how to do it, and I'm going to talk about that. But knowledge by itself is not enough. You then have to take that knowledge and turn it into capability. You have to teach them how to do it. And I wrote this piece about entrepreneurship as a craft. It's an apprentice model. You have to be able to do it. And this is why the more times you're an entrepreneur, you do it. So it's not just sit in this classroom and learn about entrepreneurship. You have to want to do it and believe you can do it. You have to then understand the theory and then the practice, and then you have to have a community. You have to have other people who are doing it and working together. By the way, I'll make all these slides available to you. And so now we have 16 minutes left. Let me just show you how we do that. So the first thing is the importance of the spirit. If all the fish are swimming this way, we encourage the students to think about swimming the other way. Not just think about it, but enjoy being different. And this can be a challenge. And some people call it creative irreverence. At MIT, we call it hacking. Hack the system. Don't just assume that's what everybody else is doing. Try to find a more clever way of doing it. Because this is how you do different things. You're not just doing the same thing. Doing the same thing more efficiently, more predictably, optimizing, that's management. What we're talking about is entrepreneurship, doing new things. And so you have to have this spirit, and we always talk about MIT of having the spirit of a pirate. It's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy. But just having the spirit without the skills is insufficient. We have to teach people to have the spirit of a pirate, but then also, once they rush into battle, to have the skills of a Navy SEAL in executing against this. So now what are those skills that we're going to teach? What I went through was, having been an entrepreneur, is what did I learn from the first company to the third? And it was very frustrating to me because I went to MIT and I took an entrepreneurship class. And then I started a company. And my first company was just bashing my head against the wall day after day because I had to learn stuff that I didn't learn at IBM. And why couldn't that have been taught to me at MIT? I was always kind of frustrated about that. So our goal is to give students that first company experience, if possible, at a university, which is a much lower stress environment, much less painful. That is, my company was called Cambridge Decision Dynamics. I spent 18 months just basically learning what I didn't know and how to get started, how to get up on the bicycle and get moving. And one of the problems was that I read books about entrepreneurship after I left, and every book had the answer to entrepreneurship because it isn't a serious field. People say, oh, you can't teach entrepreneurship. And then some new book comes out. It's not like marketing. It's not like finance. It's not like medicine where, there's a body of knowledge and academics have been studying it. There are actually very few academics in the field of entrepreneurship. So it was very prone to this faddish type of thing. And there are good points to each one of these things and more. But every time a new book came out, and the one now is Lean Startup, which do I have here? Yeah. This is the thing, the answer. Well, it isn't the answer. If you were going to build a house, which is a very unsophisticated system that's not particularly dynamic, you would not build it with one tool. You wouldn't say, to build a house, I'm just going to take a hammer. You know, that's crazy. You have to build a toolbox. And so in entrepreneurship, we need to think about how do we take and build a toolbox for the entrepreneurs that picks up the best things from all kinds of places that have also been tested by unconflicted people. And that's where academia comes into play. And so there's some conflicts there, but it's less conflicted than if you're asking someone who has a consulting business that makes a lot of money out of it. And so we're supposed to be those honest brokers. So we should be looking through and figuring out what are the tools that we should give our entrepreneurs to be successful. And that's what we curated out. Can we pass out the, it's right behind yours there? And so this is a summary of how you would go from idea to product in a systematic manner. And this is not something that, you know, I sat there or one person sat up and just came up with. That's the problem. That's the problem a lot with entrepreneurship, is that people have to say, I came up with everything. What we start with here is a systematic process that is not a line, because entrepreneurship is not a science. It is not a straight line. It is an iterative path. And the next thing people go was, why do you have to make it so complicated? Why do you have to have 24 steps? Can't you just have like 3? Because I read a blog post, and it was only 3 things we needed to be successful in entrepreneurship. There's a technical word for that. It's called bullshit. We as academics are not in the business of producing clickbait for blogs. We're in the business of producing a rigorous body of knowledge. And 24 steps is still an approximation of a very complicated process. And so if you go through this, you'll see that there's many iterations. Do you call it snakes and ladders or chutes and ladders? Do you have this game over here? Yeah. Yeah. So you'll go here and you'll find out your total addressable market is too big or too small, then you'll have to serve. And there's many, many iterations here that you'll have to go through. And so I'll just go through this. This is all in the book or online stuff I'll point out to you. We don't start with what your product is. We start with, you have an idea and you start with that, but then you take the idea and you figure out who is the customer. Is this something new? Absolutely not. This is design thinking. This is the essence of design thinking. Don't start with the how and the what. Figure out the why. But before the why, you have to figure out who, the why for who. So this is figuring out who your customer is in a very specific way and selecting and deselecting, as we did here with this very simple example of the Lamborghini and the Volvo. So who is your customer in very specific steps? Look at all the different markets that you could serve. Choose one beachhead market. In Amazon, it's books. Build an end user profile of that one. And then figure out, is the market too big or too small? Because you might have to you usually have to narrow down your market. Someone says, oh, my market's 3 billion. Isn't that great? No, that's terrible. You can't boil the ocean. There's like 4 of you at a table. How are you going to take on a $3 billion market? You got to narrow this thing down. You know, again, look at Amazon, books. You got to find that place where you're going to land. You know, they didn't land when the Nazis had Europe. They didn't land everywhere. They landed at Normandy and methodically moved in from there. That was a beachhead strategy. Again, well-known type of things. Take it, beachhead, not too big, not too small, and then build a persona for this. And this is just driving down on the end user profile to make it extremely real, the search for specificity. And then we have this, and then we're going to go into this next step of what's the context, what's the full life cycle use case of what's the problem they're solving. Clay Christensen, jobs to be done. Think of jobs to be done here. What's the full context? And you say, well, how do I know? I haven't designed the product. That's right. Don't design the product. Just understand the customer and what's the problem that you're solving, what's the opportunity you're trying to change. And then in 7, we design a brochure, a high-level product specification, not a functional product specification, not building the product, because there are lots of problems with building products. And this is where the lean startup went all wrong. Just build it and send it out there. No, there's a real problem with that. And if you have any questions, see me afterwards or just read my article in TechCrunch about our dangerous obsession with the minimum viable product. But build a brochure. Wasn't that the same thing? No, a brochure, there's much less vested in it. A brochure, I show it to you, and then you say, I don't like it, I will change it. The problem is when you build a prototype, we get what's called the IKEA effect. We move out of inquiry mode and we move into advocacy mode and we stop listening as well. It's not because we're bad people, it's just a well-known behavioral economics study. And so we build a brochure and we do A/B testing. What do you like, what do you not like? And then we figure out what the value proposition based on what they really care about. And everyone says, well, the quantified value proposition is how much they save. Well, guess what? A lot of problems in the world, people don't care how much you save them. They want to know, did you increase my reliability? Is this safer? Is it increase my image? What's the mean time to failure now? What's my time to market? And the only way you're going to know that is if you do this kind of ethnographic deep research over here on customers. Or it doesn't have to be that deep. Primary market research and understand it and make sure these things are all lined up. Then you validate it here with 10 real additional customers to make sure this isn't abstract, that you are validating that all the stuff you got from this real customer up here, this persona, and that match the end user profile is true with 10 more customers. Because if it isn't, this is de-risking it. And now if this is true, you'll probably have to iterate back here a few more times. You might change your persona. Now we know that we can generate value. We're pretty comfortable with that. But what will make it unique for us, that's our core and our competitive positioning. And then people say, great, we're done. The course is over. We can create value. We know what our competitive... No. One of the things I learned at IBM is, you create no value unless the customer buys the product. And so there's this nasty thing that engineers hate called, how does your customer acquire the product? What's the decision-making unit? Who's the end user? Who's the economic buyer? Who's the champion? Who influences those? Who has veto power? What about regulatory considerations? We lay all that out in a structured manner here in 12. And in 13, we know who makes the decision now. How do they make the decision? What authorities do they have? What's the kind of time frame it takes to do that? And then in here, we start focusing on things like windows of opportunity. Even if you know who it is, when do you sell to them? When do you sell to them? So, and I'll just finish this up, but you can see it's extremely systematic here because you can teach entrepreneurship and anyone can be an entrepreneur. I find this, people say, oh, no, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. And if you've ever been to Vietnam, you don't even need to go to Vietnam. I'll just tell you, everyone in Vietnam is an entrepreneur. You just go there and you'll see it. And why? Because they have to be. It's like my son telling me, I can't learn Spanish, Dad. No, you can learn Spanish. Everyone who's born in a Spanish country learns Spanish. Of course you can learn Spanish. You just don't want to learn Spanish. And you're coming up with some rationale. People can be entrepreneurs, and we can help them become innovation-driven entrepreneurs through a systematic process. And I can give you example after example. You can just go to our website to see that. But we're having an engineering kind of very systematic craft approach to how to do this. And then we go into what are your follow-on markets here? How do we scale the business? And then how do we make money off our product? There's stuff about LTV and cost of customer acquisition. And one of the nastiest things is this cost of customer acquisition. Entrepreneurs continually underestimate how much it costs to sell a product, a new product. That's why this person's drunk here. It's just they just believe that because one person loves their product, that everyone will buy their product. There's a reason why there are sales forces. There's a reason why people that sell stuff do better than people who don't sell stuff. It's not the best technology that wins. And so this cost of customer acquisition, how do you know what that is? Well, you have to understand decision-making. Your decision-making process, you have to come up with a business model in step 15 that reduces the friction to get through this in the best way, whether it's a consumables, one-time, subscription, etc. And then you have to price it appropriately. That will tell you what your LTV is. And then if I have a lot of space in the LTV like this one, then my cost of customer acquisition, I can choose different channels than I could if it was low. And then I can figure out what my overall cost of customer acquisition. And now, if my LTV is $1 million, is that good or not good? Well, not if my cost of customer acquisition is $2 million or even $1 million. It has to be like a third of that or less. So these are just basic physics here. And then we build the product and we go through those assumptions. And I will jump through that because I have 4 minutes to go. This is the book that we wrote for our class. And they called up and said, hey, would you be willing to make that into a book for broader consumption? I said, sure, just take it. And they said, no, that's not how it works. You have to edit it. And I said, oh, no problem. Well, that turned out to be more of a problem than I thought, if you ever got a book. But it was so worth it because I didn't expect, I thought some universities would use it in the United States. It's turned into like 20+ languages. And then all of a sudden we got a lot of questions, and that's what this book is about, answering the questions that people had from this and also stuff we learned. We have an online tool. We have a bunch of online courses to do this. Our job is to spread this knowledge far and wide. And then if we do that, then other people will enhance it and make it better. And is this everything with an entrepreneurship education? No. What I just took you through was defining and refining market fit. There's a nucleation stage, is what is entrepreneurship, that we as educators have to do. How do you come up with ideas? How do you build an initial team? Then how do you define the product, that's scalable? And then how do you develop the venture around it, just because I have it? And all these individual things, a lot of these are things that you'll recognize and you have in your marketing group or someplace else, but they have to be customized for a entrepreneurial environment. And some of them, they don't have to be. It can be semi-customized or not customized at all. And so we're trying to take entrepreneurship education to a whole nother level. So I mentioned this today. Keep calm and trust the process. People go through the semester and they freak out. It's like, no, just keep calm, trust the process, and by the end of the semester I can show you people that are doing extremely well. And our job as educators is not to create companies, it's to create entrepreneurs. And often the team, if they start the class as a team, they'll split up, and that's fine. But they all understand what entrepreneurship is, and they might understand that they don't want to work with the other people, that the two of them want to work together, and that's fine too. Oops. And so there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here, but let me go to questions. Are there questions?